Hello there. You know, something tells me that this is a particularly decently alright, kinda good, pretty wonderful turn. Yeah, 8 attacks, not bad. Hello, my fellow adventurers, and welcome to something that I have wanted to make work in the most wonderful of ways for essentially as long as I can remember. I think Moon Druid is just really fun, right? It's satisfying and quite compelling to just turn into Big Monster Thing and then maul all enemy as Big Monster Thing. The issue with Big Monster Thinging is that in Act 1 and Act 2, it's fine. It's actually really powerful, especially compared to the other characters in your party and the other classes. But in Act 3, when you start getting ridiculous items and start really having the levels to do some of the more broken min-max shenanigans the other classes can produce, well, yeah, Moon Druid falls off. It's really not helped by the fact there's only like 3 items in the entire game that even help you in wild shape, and barely any of the feats actually work, and it's just really hard to make even the badass Myrmidon transformations stronger than they just are in base. But that changes today, because I have had that moment. And I cannot wait to share with you just how, well, incredible this is. Imagine being able to attack for 7 to 8 times a turn. I don't actually know why sometimes it's 7 and sometimes it's 8. I've really tried to work it out, but maybe you guys can spot it if I can't. With a double damage dealing, stunning, massively potent electric flail that locks down every enemy on screen by stunning them, or the better form of CC, killing them. We use a couple of feats that actually do work to guarantee max damage, and then double that max damage with the lovely wet and lightning damage interaction, while taking advantage of the few bits of gear and spells that do actually contribute massively to your wild shape, while having an extra buddy along for the ride who's essentially a mini sidekick version of you, and we do all of this in a multi-class way. It really is both fun and really potent, and actually brings Moon Druid up to the kind of levels that we see from the other classes towards the end game. So without further ado, let's go to the levels. Starting with Druid, shockingly, and it is kind of shockingly because a lot of the time we want to start with a different main class than the one we're actually building for proficiencies and such, but this time around we are all good. With Druid then, we want to grab whichever cantrips you like the look of. I would recommend specifically Shillelagh and Thorn Whip, as they are 2 unique cantrips to Druid that we can't get from the other classes we'll be multiclassing into, but take whatever you feel is best. Your abilities don't matter a crazy amount because this is wild shape focused, but I would recommend getting the 16 dex just to have that little advantage in going sooner in the turn order, and then of course the wisdom for all of your stuff you do out of wild shape, and that's all well and good, the rest as you see fit. Over to the world of level 2, we can choose our subclass and actually get said wild shape, so choose your Circle of the Moon. The little bit of healing is fine, but it's not the most exciting class feature in the world. And then when it comes to your spells, you want to make sure to get Longstrider and Create Water. These 2 are important. Enhanced Leap is also nice, but after that, just get the ones that really speak to you. None of the spells are going to be super key here, except a few select ones that I, of course, will point out, so we can sort of just power through a few of these early levels. Get yourself another cantrip, and once more prepare a extra spell for you to use, and then we can get our first feat. We are going to grab Warcaster for advantage on concentration. This does actually work in wild shape. The reaction component doesn't, but the advantage on con does, which is very important. So, we move on then to level 5, where we get our level 3 spells, and I do like plant growth, as that's something you can put down and just leave there before you go in wild shape, and we will be immune to it ourselves, and then Call Lightning is always, as ever, reliable. At level 6 then, we get Primal Strike, which is nice to help our damage, but isn't the, most exciting thing either. Then we move on to level 7, where we get access to our level 4 spells. Of here, you actually do want one in particular, and that is Freedom of Movement. It's a permanent all-day buff that does work on your wild shape, so we might as well have that on us, and that is nice. Then we get to level 8, which is our next feat, and for that then, we want to go for Savage Attacker. So this actually does work on the Myrmidon's weapons attacks, and given the attack we use on our Myrmidon has 3 different damage dice, this will roll all of them twice and give us the highest result. So it curves our average damage while attacking in that form up massively, and is by far and away the next best feat choice, especially given that most of the other ones don't work. If we were going to use any other wild shape form that does unarmed attacks, then obviously we'd take Tavern Brawler, but as it stands, Savage Attacker is the way to go here, and it does a massive amount to help the damage output of the Myrmidon really compete. So, with our level 5 spell, we of course want to get Conjure Elemental, so once we get our 6 level spell slot, we can conjure a second Air Myrmidon to help us out here, and then we are really approaching the end of our Druidness as we hit level 10 and get what we are really after here, which is the ability to turn into the proper good elementals, specifically the air one, for our good. Then we get improved Wild Strike, and this is incredible too. We get to do 2 more attacks after making an arm strike in wild shape. Now the thing is, even though the Air Myrmidon attacks with a weapon, it's not unarmed, this still works on it, so we do get to attack 3 times per action with the Air Myrmidon, which is obviously ludicrously good, and one of the things that really makes this build tick. Then grab yourself your final cantrip, and we are good to finish with Druid. So, 2 levels left, and a tri-multiclass. Obviously that means we're only getting 1 level of 2 other things. Firstly, that is Wizard. This, as you might guess, is quite literally just for haste. Choose whatever spells you want, it doesn't matter, because we will be preparing haste that you learn from a scroll, and that is lovely. Our last level then, just to really tip this over the edge into silliness, is going to come from Cleric, specifically War Domain, as the bonus attack War Priest extra charges do apply and are usable in your wild shape, so we start to push those ludicrous amounts of attacks per turn. Grab, of course, the lore-appropriate deity, and then choose whichever spells you want. You've already got Create Water from Druid, so we don't need to have that here, and you are officially ready to go. Here we are then, all ready to rumble in this beautiful build that gives us more attacks per turn than a hasted level 11 fighter. And that's really fun to be able to say when we have such ridiculous damage output. Now, of course, you can just use all of your vast arsenal of spells normally out of wild shape, as druids do, with the little infusion from Cleric and Wizard, and that's all well and good, and yes, you could summon an extra elemental before you wild shape too. I've not done that just to keep it focused on the Myrmidon flavor, but that is definitely worthwhile, and your general just Call Lightning, Create Water, etc. But what we really care about is the few things that actually work for us. Summoning a second Myrmidon to fight alongside us. Your choices basically are an extra air one for even more damage output on stuns, or you can go for a water one to have a more supportive buddy that can heal you and do all of the ice shenanigans. You can Freedom of Movement yourself, which lasts into your wild shape, same with Longstrider, put down a plant growth area before transforming, and so on and so forth. But in terms of what you're actually working with here, it's a very focused set of abilities. But before we get to how to actually play it all, let's go over gear, because it's quite sadly, to do so. With only a few items working, yeah, I've got my Kohesh gear on just for an arcane battery to cast one of my prep spells for free, but that's really not required. I've just sort of not really unequipped it more than anything, but every slot that is unequipped, there isn't a meaningful item that actually helps to put in there. Even something like the Amulet of Greater Health, the advantage on con, doesn't transfer into your wild shape. I have tested so much, essentially everything I can get hold of, and yeah, it's really anticlimactic. We can at least get the Shapeshifter hat, but that doesn't actually matter because a wild shape into a Myrmidon takes 2 charges, so we can't do 2 forms per short rest anyway. And yeah, that's just sort of here because it technically does help, air quotes, so that's neat. So the only thing that actually matters then is this, the Armor of Moonbasking. You get this from the silent dude in the sewers, which is a weird sentence without context, isn't it? And he is right next to the fast travel point, so buy it from him or relieve it of him in any nefarious way you like the sound of. This is great. The 22 temporary hit points into the Myrmidon makes you even tankier, and the reduced damage is nice too, but the fortitude is even better. The extra AC and the saving throw advantage is fantastic to just permanently have in the Myrmidon form. If you don't have access to this, or you don't have access to it yet, you can, instead of the Cleric, take a Sorcerer of Draconic Origins to then choose Cold Dragon and get Armor of Agathes and cast it on yourself, and then that buff and temporary health lasts into your wild shape. But with this existing, we can be a little bit more liberal with the classes we're choosing for those last few levels. In any case then, yeah, make sure you've learnt your haste from a scroll for the wizard part of this, and we are good to get into the action. That action is then as follows. Summon your elemental using your 6th level spell slot. Make sure it's another air, as that is the most min-max way of doing it, but truthfully you can have any of the other 3 if you prefer them or want the extra utility that they come with, but for now we will bring out our lovely lightning flail buddy. Then we want to just buff up with everything that we can. Give him Longstrider, give yourself Longstrider, so you can really get everywhere on the battlefield to hit everyone with your flail. You don't want anyone to be left out, of course. You want to give him freedom of movement, give yourself freedom of movement, and then we're kind of good on your permanent buffs. You can throw out the plant growth if you want, just to make things a little bit harder for the enemies, as we are immune to it, so that's really nice. And then we are good to haste ourselves. At this point, you want to enter into turn-based mode to not actually waste any of the turns, get close enough to the group of enemies you want to fight, or if it's a forced combat, use one of your initial actions to haste, and then the next to create, and then go into the wild shape next turn. But for this one then, we're going to bust out a level 5 create water, just so we can reach the ranged guy at the very edge, as well as everyone in between. And there we are. Get everyone nice and moist. Why did I say get everyone nice and moist? And now we are good to bust into our wild shape and choose your air Myrmidon. And now combat can begin. I like to start it, if I'm choosing it on my own terms, with my summon, walk up to the most dangerous enemy and flail them down, and then proceed to critical miss. So that's really, really cool. So we're going to take a few little attacks, but thankfully we have Warcaster still active, so even if we do take a hit, we shouldn't drop a haste, which is really nice. And now we get to go to our turn and see this absurdity really start to take place. Even if we do get locked down or anything, thankfully, because of Elemental Warp, it's not really a huge issue. So off we go, and we will use our summoned one just to get a little bit of a hit, and sadly he didn't quite get the stun. So, here we are on us then. We've got our beautiful 2 actions, we've got our bonus for our War Priest, and essentially, it's time to just have, well, a great time. So, Electrified Flail then. You can use this as many times as you want per turn, and you always should, because it's just better than your normal attack. It just has an extra d10 and a chance to stun. So that d8, that d8, and that d10 is what Savage Attacker is rolling twice and taking the highest result. So as you can see, it really does increase our average output. So if we go up to our first and give him a little bit of a slap, sadly he saved from the stun, but that is okay. And the wet is obviously making him take double damage, and away he goes. Then we can go up to our next one and get the next hit in. Sadly, again, no stun, which is a shame, but hey, we got the stun, but we also got the murder, so that's also definitely nice. So if you do get the stun, you now get advantage on your attacks, which is wonderful, but I like to then move on and just get as many enemies stunned in my opening turn as is possible, as that gives you the biggest advantage to actually set up with. Sadly, we didn't do the best job. We killed 2 enemies and stunned a third one, and that's a bad, air quotes, turn for this build, so that really tells you a lot about just how potent it is. And having this massive field of electrified water to actually operate with is, of course, very, very nice too. And the forms are decently tanky, as you're seeing, and that Warcaster coming in very handy to maintain that haste. Let's see what our friend here does, and indeed it's going to be to slap us. Please don't maim us. Okay, that's all well and good then. We will have him warp up next to the Watcher, go for another stun on him, as you can indeed stun the Watchers. Hey, there we go, stun on the Watcher. And then once more, you just go down the line, hitting everyone until they're either dead or they are stunned. Ooh, okay. That's, yeah. And essentially then, you just kind of keep on like that. The general rule set of hit everyone until they're either dead or stunned and then move on using your huge amount of movement speed and attacks to dominate and control the entire fight in very, very few or even just 1 turns. You have your buddy running around helping you out as well, and you've got loads of buffs and power-ups from the few things that do actually work on the wild shape, and then they're just little infusion of Wizard for haste, the Cleric for even more attacks. It's just a very tight-knit, synergistic, and potent build that I really enjoy. And at the same time, it's very straightforward because it's just run around and hit everyone with a flail. Yes, you can use your AoE silence on the air Myrmidon. Yes, you can summon a different element Myrmidon to have different utilities as your side companion, and obviously, talking companions, you still have your other 3 party members as well, taking advantage of this electrified stun death pool you have made. It really is phenomenal, and I am so glad it works as well as it does, and I hope you have both enjoyed it and inspired by it. And if you do give it a go, well, good luck and have fun. For now then, like you've enjoyed this, subscribe and hit the bell for more. Consider supporting the future of the channel on Patreon down below, and until we meet again, a goodbye.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.